Steve, we obviously have the overall projection from the decision desk that Donald Trump will be the overall winner. But in terms of the total amount of vote in, we're still pretty light. We've got 2% in total statewide. As you're watching key counties come in, though, are you learning more about the contours of this?
Yeah, we're seeing the patterns emerge that we were talking about beforehand in terms of Trump's strong pretty much everywhere right now. It's just a question of how strong. But where Haley's strengths are and where DeSantis' strengths are. And you do see there are two counties now that are Haley's color, where we have partial returns in here. So you've got Johnson County, again, University of Iowa, Iowa City. This is a Rubio County from 2016, and we have some precincts in. And look at that, Haley is leading here. This is exactly the kind of county she needs to be winning, and she needs to be trying to get a margin here. So let's see if that continues for her. The other one is the other big college county in Iowa. It's Story County, Iowa State University. Well, let's say hello to the Cyclones who are watching out there. And again, this is Haley, and look at that, Ramaswamy. Now, this is only a small number of votes, but again, Haley doing extremely well there. Now, you see also one county with the DeSantis color, and this is interesting because we showed you some returns from Lyon County, and then there's Sioux County. And Sioux County is, in terms of Republican caucuses, it punches way above its weight. It is heavily, heavily religious. Turns out huge numbers, 9th biggest vote-producing county in 2016, despite being a relatively small county population-wise. And you see DeSantis in the early returns there is actually leading Trump. Remember, this was Donald Trump's worst county in 2016 in the entire state of Iowa. Donald Trump got 11% here. You can't even see him on this screen. He did so poorly in Sioux County. Now, Donald Trump, with these early returns, has tripled that, but there's DeSantis actually ahead of him in the early returns. So it's interesting. This is exactly what DeSantis wants to see there. He's not seeing it so far in Lyon County, which is very, very similar. But Sioux County is one of those 42 that is Huckabee, Santorum, and Cruz. And DeSantis wants to see that color popping up in a lot more of those counties, and he wants to keep it in Sioux. This is only 10%, but keep an eye on Sioux because, again, hugely evangelical, church-going, and this was as bad as it got for Donald Trump in 2016. So Haley doing well in those college degree, high education, high income level counties so far, and there you go. In evangelical Iowa, there's one that right now the DeSantis is getting some votes out of.
Steve, can I ask you a question about the entrance polls? There's two questions that were asked in the entrance polls that I just wanted to see if we could pull up. That first one there on the left, yep. Did Biden legitimately win in 2020?
Yeah, so yes, 30% here.
Oh, wow.
No, 66%. And see if I can give you the actual breakdown here.
Statewide entrance in Iowa?
Yeah, this is among all Republican caucus goers that we got into our entrance poll here. So among the yeses, the breakdown in vote is Nikki Haley, 53%, Ron DeSantis, 26%, and Donald Trump getting 10%, not surprisingly. And among the no's on this question here, who said Joe Biden did not win it, it is 68% for Trump. It is 16% for Ron DeSantis. And just double checking my math here, it is 6% for Nikki Haley. So just a stark divide there. In the smaller group here, a little bit less than 1 in 3 who say Biden legitimately won it. Trump's getting buried. But 2 out of 3 said Biden didn't win it. And look at that, Trump's getting more than 2 out of 3 right there, more than 50 points ahead of DeSantis.
Can we just pause for a second?
Yeah, I want to say something about that.
2/3 of Iowa Republican caucus goers believe that the president of the United States right now is a fake,
illegitimate,
is not actually the president, and is running some sort of scam wherein Donald Trump really is the president and Joe Biden is pretending to be. 2/3 of Iowa Republican caucus goers.
Yeah, and I would just say well, that adverb legitimately, there's some wiggle room around, but I will say this. To Lawrence's point about Trump being a quasi-incumbent here, which he is, right? I mean, he was the president of the United States before. The thing that makes it weird is that usually when you lose, you get turfed out. So George H.W. Bush isn't running around after he loses in 92. People don't want to hear from him. They don't want to hear from John McCain. They don't want to hear from Mitt Romney. They do want to hear from Donald Trump. You think to yourself, well, why? Well, that answer goes a long way, right? The big lie is, I didn't lose. I'm not a loser. They stole it from me.
I'm secretly still president.
I'm secretly still president. So when you look at that, it's like, right, why is this different than what we've had in the past? But the other thing I'm curious about, Steve, if you don't mind, is that other question. about the possibility of conviction, which we talked about, the meteor that may land at any moment, which, people who are there know that that's possible. Take us through that one.
Yeah, no, I mean, so ask the question here. If Donald Trump is convicted, do you consider him fit to be president? Again, this is our entrance poll of Republican caucus goers. So yes, similar, very similar spread here. Yes is 63%. And I can just show you the breakdown on this is those who say he's fit to serve, 71%, then it will say they're going to vote for him tonight. And it's 13% for DeSantis. It is 6% for Haley. Among those who say no, Trump would not be fit to serve, the number is Haley. Remember, Haley seems to be gobbling up the lion's share of the anti-Trump votes. You're seeing 50% for Haley with this group. DeSantis is getting 30%. Trump is getting 9%. And actually, Trump is barely edging out Ramaswamy, who's getting 8% with this group. But yeah, this is about a 1/3, 2/3 divide about the legitimacy of the 2020 election, about Trump's legal situation. And you could just see how that is the divide you're seeing there in the party.
But again, though, big picture is the big picture here. This means that of people turning out to caucus in Iowa, a third of them think that if Donald Trump is convicted, he is not fit to be president. In this incredibly conservative electorate where Trump is going to run away with the Iowa caucuses by a mile and then some, still a third of that electorate says if he's convicted, they're going to nominate him nationwide? When even a third of Iowa caucus goers say no, he can't be president if he's convicted? I'm sorry, but he's going to be convicted.
Well, Rachel, there's overwhelming evidence in several of these cases. So I can't say what's going to happen, but there's very strong evidence.
I cannot.
Go ahead.
He's going to be convicted.
All right. Stage whispering.
Yes.
So we all know the limits of polling, and I think the audience and the citizenry knows the limits because we've seen polls go sideways. If you poll Chris and I and say, are we going to follow our New Year's resolution all year? Say, yeah, I've been running this month. But we might not. In other words, our answer to the pollster about certain things may not hold true. And so let's say that the 32% is high, because some of it involves motivated reasoning by people who oppose Trump and other people who don't like the idea of admitting that they would stomach this. But even if it's triple, let's say it's 10%, triple, and it's 10 or 8 or even 5%. And Jen Psaki's here. I can't wait to hear what you think. 5% minus the 7 million that Trump came up short last time doesn't get you to another electoral college or national victory. Independents and Republicans outside of the caucus-going universe are at a higher percentage than this, according to polls. So if your stage whisper is right, and I know you to be frequently right, okay, if you're right,
you're the only one who thinks that
there's a conviction, then there is overwhelming data, new data tonight among Republican activists and a bunch of other indies, normies, and otherwise who say, no, I don't want a felon running the country. So that would be, and I don't say this as anything other than observation, that would be bad news for Trump in a general.
Right. Look, I also think we're going to see tomorrow, and we saw last week, that Trump is basically running a campaign in the courtroom, right? He was there more than he was in Iowa over the last week. Is that going to work for the Republican electorate? It seems pretty clearly from these entrance polls, yes. But to your point, the whole electorate is an entirely different population of people. And Trump loves his own strategy, so it's very possible he may keep doubling down on that, right?
Yes.
The worst thing we've learned about the Republican primary electorate is not yet in these entrance polls questions tonight. CBS poll, their final poll before the Iowa caucus, this is a national poll, shows that 81% of Republican primary voters and caucus participants, 81% of those people agree with Donald Trump that immigrants are poisoning the blood of this country. That means that 81% of the Republican primary electorate believe Nikki Haley has poisoned blood and is poisoning the blood of the United States. So that as a roadblock for Nikki Haley is impossible, but it also shows you what you're up against in any kind of campaign against voters like that. The convertibility of voters like that to anything other than the Trump view of the world is impossible. There's no campaign ad. There's no speech you can make. There's no, Republican who Chris Christie might be able to convince some of them. Not them. Not any of the 81%. Not one of them can be converted.
And the bottom line is, as much as we want to respect, and it's been interesting listening to these voters, you must understand that the Republican base is overwhelmingly those people. It's white evangelicals for whom supporting Trump is a matter of faith. It is a matter of their religion. It is a religion. And therefore, Nikki Haley is unacceptable for the reasons Lawrence has just said. She is one of the people poisoning the blood of the country. Vivek Ramaswamy's wife went out into Iowa to try to convince people to vote for her husband. What she got back is people saying, well, where are you from again? Were you born in the United States? Was your husband born in the United States? Because, what religion are you again? Oh, you were Hindu? I don't know if that's acceptable to me. And saying that to her face. And he suddenly discovered at the end that, I don't know, he went sideways with Trump somehow, and Trump started attacking him and saying he went birther on him. At any moment, those voters could do the same thing. The answer to your question, Chris, is are they going to still nominate him despite his 91 criminal? Yes.
Probably.
Yes, they're going to nominate him.